to This Morning on TVC News. I am Abosadi Adenio Aderemi. Today on the program, we are discussing the Nigerian economy. On Wednesday, the Nigerian Naira hit a record high of 1,400 Naira against the US dollar at the official market during the midweek trading session. And the currency maintained the appreciation trend that was seen since the start of the week in the Nigerian foreign exchange market. The Central Bank of Nigeria released data showing that the local currency appreciated by about 1.26% on Tuesday, that's 2 days ago, as the dollar quoted at 1,401 Naira 22 kobo, and that represented a gain of about 17 Naira 73 kobo compared to what we had 1,418 Naira 95 kobo recorded on Monday. Now, there are some critical questions we're asking on the show today. What does this increase mean for the economy, and what factors are responsible for it? Joining me in the studio to unpack this morning is a guest. He is an economist and financial analyst, Kayode Oyedeji. Good morning, Mr. Oyedeji. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. As an economist, I'm just wondering what's going through your mind when you hear, oh, the Naira is at 1,400 Naira. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's good news, really. It's a thing to be happy about, and it's a thing we hope we'll be able to sustain. We've come a long way, and we thought we were losing it at a point. People were cynical about what the reforms would bring, but thankfully the reforms have been quite rewarding, and we are beginning to heave a sigh of relief. Everybody is getting excited. The reforms have been a very difficult one. We started with the oil reforms, move up petroleum subsidy reforms. Then the CBN was bold enough to streamline the FX regime. The era of multiple exchange rates was brought to an end. So it's been good news, and we can only hope this will be sustained. And when you look at it, really, government has no choice than to consolidate on the reforms. There's no going back on it. There's not likely to be any form of policy reversal or policy somersault. What we expect government to do is to look at what government is doing now, look at how to improve on different dimensions of it, and make sure that the tempo of the reform, of the various reforms, that they are sustained. So it's a good time for the economy, it's a good time for Nigeria, and people can begin to have hope. That's the main thing about this. We've left the era of hopelessness when people thought we were on the way to Harare or to Venezuela. People are beginning to have confidence in the economy. Foreign investors are beginning to show a lot of enthusiasm looking at the direction of the Nigerian market. The entire market, or the entire economy, is active, both formal, informal. The activities are becoming more intense, and it's a good one for Nigeria. We only hope that gradually we'll still have more gains. Gradually, the average consumer, the average man on the street will feel the impact. So when you say the Naira has appreciated,
yes,
what exactly does it say about the average man on the
Exactly, I was going there because, you know, when analysts speak, you have your faces lit up, and then people are wondering, what is this gentleman talking about here?
Oh, yes. It's always important to talk about what that does to the economy, what that does to the operators, and how the average man on the street will benefit from that. Number one is prices will come down. Nigeria is still largely rely on importation or what happens in the international market and all the likes. So as prices are coming, the Naira is gaining flip, prices are likely to come down. Then investors begin to have interest and confidence in the economy because we have reached a point where everybody, the government, the operators, the regulators can beat their chest and say, oh, we've achieved the level of stability, and we can plan on that basis. We can assess the market as it is and look at the potentials and see whether it's good for us to go in there, do business in Nigeria. So there'll be an increase in economic activities. And as much as we have that, the consumers will benefit because they have more area of items, services, goods to pick from. There's more competition within the economy. Where you have competition, there is likely to be price drop. So all along, the consumers will benefit. The markets, the investment market will benefit because people are beginning to look at Nigeria and say, oh, That's the next biggest destination for investment in Africa.
Right.
So the investment, the reform so far has cleared all doubts about the Nigerian economy, about the Nigerian markets, about the potentials of the economy. And people are beginning to say we have to return to Nigeria. And returning to Nigeria means they are bringing a lot of things to Nigeria. They are bringing expertise, they are bringing revenue, they are bringing income, they are creating jobs in Nigeria. And then they do that, there's this, it dovetails, it goes through the economy, more goods and services at reasonable price, more competition. So it's a good one for us. We are in a season where we should have hope. We are in a season where we should begin to be particularly positive.
And when you were talking, I observed that you were careful to use the word likely, like prices would likely come down, because we are in this system and we know what happens. That even when, usually these appreciation happens, sometimes it doesn't exactly trickle. You might not necessarily find it reflect in the prices of the general commodities you have in the market, and you then wonder what is happening. Is it the marketers, or is it just that it's not stable enough for us to see?
The key thing is for productivity to increase. And how will productivity increase? There will be production of more goods and services. So consumers can have more options. Consumers are not left at the mercy of producer or a single producer. And I think if you look at the body language of this government or the economic managers, the managers of the economy, they frown somehow at anything that will limit supply in the markets. So they do everything possible to make sure that there is a form of competition and there is increase in the supply of all items, from food to petroleum products and all that. So government is doing a lot of things on different sides of the economy, trying to make sure there is adequate supply of goods and services. There's no supply gap at any point in time. So if you do that one, and at the same time you are still able to ensure that the fair value of your currency is not declining, is on the rise like we have had, then it's a win-win for consumers. Number one, there is competition within the economy. Government is deliberately encouraging competition, competitive tendencies. They are not leaving the consumers at the mercy of producers or any single producer or few producers of items. And at the same time, they are making sure they are trying what they can to make sure that the value of our currency improves over time. So it's a win-win for consumers. It's a win-win for operators. It's a win-win for government. So I think we will look at it and say good time is back, like we had during the economic reforms of President Obasanjo, 2006, 2007, thereabouts, when we had banking consolidation and people trooped into Nigeria. So people missed their way to the stock exchange. They came from abroad and they were asking people if we were on our way to the stock exchange because they were interested in the Nigerian markets. We are almost back to that period, provided we don't get carried away easily, complacency doesn't set in, provided we're able to sustain the tempo, look at the gains, look at the potentials, then look at the downside, the unintended consequences, and the likely abuse of these programs or these reforms. If government can tighten up those loose ends, the economy is set to create massive weight. People should begin to look at the opportunities that the economic direction presents.
So you have begun diving into those reforms, but I would like us to dwell on them now, because I would ask you about what factors have brought us where we are. The last time we had it this good, or at least this high, was early 2024. So this is like a 2-year high for us as a nation. So talk to us about those reforms that have actually brought us to this level where we are now.
Well, I will start by saying that our output as a country has increased. If you look at oil and gas, for instance, we were almost nowhere at the point around 2023. It was like a doom. Everybody thought we were losing it. Now, oil output has increased significantly, so we are doing more in that sector, making more money from oil, though we are still a little below our projected figures here and there. So oil output has increased. Oil prices has also been a little bit stable in the last 1 year, thereabouts. Then we do less of petroleum products importation now. Dangote refinery is working and it's producing. It has taken a lot of pressure off the foreign exchange markets. In addition to that, when we talk about government economic reforms, what does government want to achieve with these reforms? The most important target of government is to create efficiency within the economy. efficiency in terms of government is able to remove hindrances to economic growth, hindrances to operations of each operator economic agents. So government has been able to achieve that one substantially. So foreigners are now looking at, all over the world, globally, people look at where best to put their investments. A lot of money are looking for where to go. People are looking for which market gives you reasonable level of security, reasonable level of returns. Those two things, and that's what government is trying to do. When we talk about security of investment now, we're not talking about the physical security, which is also important. We'll get to that point. We're talking about security of investment, that you put your money in country A and you're able to get your money out when you need it, and your money has not lost value. So that's security of investment. Then people are also looking at the security, the stability of your currency. The exchange rate regime, which we had, multiple exchange rates, very volatile. You can't predict what will happen tomorrow. Then you can't even predict what rate you are working with. Then you can't even predict what government policies will be tomorrow. So government has been able to streamline that. We now have a uniform exchange rate that you can work with, your planners can work with, your forecast can be reasonable. Unlike before, when we had about 4, 5, 6 foreign exchange rates, we had one for producers, we have one for consumers, we have some banks, we have some for Hajj, we have all kinds of stuff. This CBN has been able to say, no, let's bring everything to the table. Then we have uniform exchange rate. So if you are coming to Nigeria to do business, you can do your forecast and say, exchange rate last year, 1,400, it has been relatively stable. We expect it to maintain that trend in 2026. So it's good for business. And if, for instance, you have brought in your money, I talked about security of investment earlier, you brought in, let's say, $1 billion, you've done business in Nigeria, you are ready to repatriate your investments or take it elsewhere or take it home, your $1 billion will not be $800 million because of fluctuation, because the Naira has lost value. It's likely to be a little above that or whatever your projections are. So that stability is key. People will continue to look at the Nigerian market. And the yield in Nigeria is high. Either the yield in investment market, investment instruments, financial instruments, or even the real sector. If you do manufacturing in Nigeria, Nigeria has the biggest consumer market in the whole of West Africa, in the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa. So the market is there, the people is there, the people are there, the energy, everything is aggregating into a big, big market which anybody is ready to make money anywhere in the world will look at. So it's a big one for the economy. Give it to government at this point. There won't be complacency along the line. They've been able to create a platform that will endear, that will be creative, that will entice people to come to Nigeria to do business. All
right, so we look forward to having more businesses troop into the country and having the economy expand even more. All right, so we need to take a break now. But then when we return from that break, we will take it from there and see how we can actually sustain this momentum that we have now gathered in the Nigerian economy. Please stay with us, everyone. That we must not be complacent, even as we enjoy this moment. So what steps must we take to sustain and maintain this momentum?
Oh, yes, we must not slip off, must not lose our guard. We still have a long way to go. And I also need to say this. Naira gained tremendously in recent days because of the value of dollars itself. Dollar has not really fared well globally. So Naira has benefited from that. If you compare it to what has happened to pound sterling, for instance, it's still largely what it is. But that does not detract from the fact that we are having a good run generally. The economy is showing strength, inflation rate is coming down, and the growth for this year is likely to be much higher, a little higher than what we had last year. If we continue with that, we won't have the value of the Naira getting stronger than the budget estimate of 1,400 Naira to $1. So what do we need to do really? It's very obvious. The reforms we cannot clap with one hand. We must deal with the other side of the reforms. We must make sure that the optics of the reforms are in order. We must make sure that the leaks within the economy are dealt with and that national resources are committed to building the real sector of the economy. We need to invest more in infrastructure. We need to invest more in agriculture. If you look at what government has rightly done in the last 3 years to be flexible with food imports into Nigeria, making sure that to avert a food crisis. They've done that one very effectively in the last 2 years. That prices have come down, and we've now moved from people are hungry to farmers are hungry. Well, whether farmers are angry or not, the important thing is that we've been able to escape a food crisis. We've been able to move away from that. So government must begin to look now at how do we boost productivity within the economy. And the key thing is subsidizing agriculture, creating our infrastructure, more and more investment in infrastructure, then ensuring that the benefits of government reforms, they do not end up providing, keeping offices, maintaining offices, but they are used to provide services to the people. They are used to provide support, social buffer for the people. So that people can.
Okay, we'll take it from there, about what these, the benefits should actually be used for, not just about maintaining offices. As you have described it. We have a caller. We have Joshua calling from Iriwolide in Ogun State. Good morning, Joshua. Welcome to the program.
Okay, good morning, man, and my greetings to your guests. As per the economy, I just want to go straight to one point I have noticed. I think for the first time we are fortunate as a nation to have a president that is directly marketing his company, his country, his nation. We have a president that is pursuing investment, with nations. It is very uncommon to have that, especially when you have the man, he understands numbers and he knows how to identify, those low-hanging fruits, nations that you never knew they could actually have serious things to do with Nigeria. Suddenly, this man is able to spot them and is going after them directly. A lot of people don't understand, why doesn't he send a minister? Why doesn't he? When you have a president engaging head-to-head with other presidents, what do you expect? That nation will be built, right? And for me personally, if it's only one voice in Nigeria, I want to appreciate President Tinubu. That man is doing well for Nigeria. Yeah, we can't see it, but because people are talking about people are hungry and all that. For me, we are hungry because productivity is very low. This is the lowest time in Nigeria where you have the citizens who are not even, engaged in productive activities. I came from a Nigeria where if you don't work, you don't eat. Now we have today where people are expecting to eat more than anyone else without doing anything. So for me, I think we have an economy that has a tone for success based on reforms. And the reforms have names. It's not like you have an economy where you are printing money.
All right,
that's where people should understand the difference.
All right,
now
that's
we have
the
an
difference.
Economy where you can give a name that, okay, your success is coming from reforms from the energy sector, reforms from the oil sector. I know what I'm building on.
Indeed, Joshua.
I'm happy with what I'm doing.
Indeed,
so
Joshua.
All right.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Thank you very much for speaking from your heart and talking about, talking about the Nigeria that you grew up in and what, you seem to have been seeing around you now. Well, let's quickly inform you that we will take a break from our regular programming to bring you a live broadcast. This time it's here in Lagos from the University of Lagos, where there is a signing of Memorandum of Understanding between the University of Lagos and the University of Birmingham. This program this morning, other programs and news continues on our other platforms and websites, www.tvcnews.tv. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Oyedeji, you were talking about, because really this matter you're talking about, the issue is critical. And that's the reason people keep asking questions. For instance, you talk about the new tax law, they're asking questions. Okay, I'm not saying I don't want to pay tax, but what will the tax be used for? Those are critical questions. So now also, yes, we're making money. Yes, Naira has appreciated. Yes, foreign, what is our foreign reserve is growing, is expanding. But what is this money being used for? So talk to us about what you think should be the sustainable use of the resources coming in at this time.
Okay, I would still like to go back to the last caller. Let me just make it mark. President Tinubu has assumed the position of the chief marketing officer of the country, and he's quite conversant with figures. He's going from one place to the other, targeting those who can help Nigeria, those who can bring money to Nigeria, who can bring convertible currency to Nigeria to help Naira and to help the economy, and that's quite commendable. And if you look at the targets, it's looking at critical areas: agriculture, oil and gas in particular, oil and gas. And we saw the pledge share made last week, about $20 billion worth of investment to come in from that. If he's able to actualize all this, greater days ahead of us. But that said, yes, an average Nigerian is still very, very expectant. He's still looking at what government will do. That's why I said we can't clap with one hand. As we reform the revenue side, we must reform the expenditure side.
All right, let's take another caller now. Mazi Okura for calling from Arochukwu. Good morning, Mazi. Welcome to This Morning.
Good morning, my sister. Good morning, our guests in the studio.
Good morning.
Now that the dollar is gaining ground, I don't know why the manufacturers are making the life very, very static. Static in the sense that they are still making the whole world believe that the dollar is still at the old rate right from the time of removal of oil, which is not healthy. So there's need for the manufacturers to shift a little shift. Little shift in the sense that all this importation they bring now, the goods be coming down. Because if you go now to agri sectors, all these machineries that they bring in now, in those days, at least 2 years ago, the dollar was, but now it is good for them to bring down the price so that the agriculturists, that is the farmers, will get these tractors at a cheaper rate. It will also help our economy in terms of agriculture. You can even the books, there are some of the books we use that are imported. Even the drugs, all these are imported. All these things, the manufacturers will do the needful. In as much as the dollar is getting, they should do all this to come down so that people will know that yes, the economy is bouncing to the normal thing gradually. But they still keep things at the look at, go to the market, go to a restaurant to buy food that used to be 2,000 naira. They are still selling the same thing. Knowing pretty well that the price of okra, crayfish has come down. But they see like stockfish. But they don't. I don't know what. Let us tell our dealers in any factor, in any sector, to do what? To do the needful. In as well as the is balancing down government confidence, they should do the needful. Good morning. Mazi Okura is my name from Arochukwu. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Thank you very much, Mazi. Yes, back to that same situation about why prices remain the same despite, improvement in the economy. And you're talking about we should not clap with one hand. All right.
So we would also urge government to still intensify efforts to reform the revenue sector. Government, unfortunately, I've said it several times on programs like this, we run a complicated federal structure that limits federal government's influence or control over subnationals. So when you make money from tax, you make money from oil, from other sources, it goes into the federation account. The subnationals get about half of it. The states and local government, what do they do with this money? What level of accountability do we have at that level? A local government, for instance, should be able to account to the local government, to the people there, what they have done with the money. And if you see what the president is pursuing, he's trying to drive development through the subnationals. State governments are making more money. Some are making about 5, 7, 10 times what they used to make. The same thing with local governments. The strategy is to make sure that the subnationals are empowered to effectively drive development. Unfortunately, they are not doing as much as expected, or they are not even accountable to the people, or the level of awareness about their roles, the opportunities they have, the capacity now has declined. So people look at every problem as a federal government problem. We must begin to look at those problems as local problems. We must begin to look at and say who is responsible for education, secondary education, primary education in my neighborhood. People must get involved in the budget process. If my local government is developing budget for the year, how do we get the CDS involved? If they're having a project in my neighborhood, how do we get the communities involved?
Right, so we need to begin to
determine the priorities of each community, each local government, and co.
We need to begin to ask critical questions.
We need reforms that will address some of these small, little but very important problems.
All right, we have another caller, George, calling from Ikeja. Good morning, George. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, madam, and good morning to the guests. You see, with the kind of aggressive reforms that the president came with, I didn't expect anything less. As a matter of fact, if you gauge it with the intensity of the reforms, I expected that by now the Naira will be less than 1,000 Naira. But I know that there are diehards among us in this country who would want us to remain where we were because they were gaining from the rocks. That's why what Manzi was saying comes to mind. When the dollar was 1,800, the price of goods and services at that time that they jacked up is still what they are selling now that the dollar is 1,400. So who is punishing who? It also brings me to the problem that the importers of petrol are projecting in our country. We have petrol, we have Dangote Forex that is sufficient for local consumption, but they are doing everything possible to make sure his own doesn't function so that they can be importing fuel. Who wants to gain from that? We have to talk to ourselves in this country. The president is doing everything possible to make sure he brings Nigeria to the limelight. Investors are having more confidence in our country. It's no longer the way they treat Nigerians when you go outside. I had an experience in Netherlands. I was just passing through their country. I wasn't going to their country. At the airport, they had to squeeze my toothpaste out to make sure I wasn't having cocaine there. It was as bad as that just because I was holding a green and white passport. Now, confidence is returning. When you see, those who travel often will tell you now that such things are no longer, prevalent everywhere. But we, the Nigerians, we have to cooperate with the government.
All right.
That's just where the appeal should stand now. Should a few people just, hijack the system at the detriment of 230 million others? Good morning.
Thank you very much, George. That same very important issue.
It's still the same issue.
Yeah.
But contrary to what people say that they've not felt the impact, government figures show that we've had a turnaround in terms of pricing across board. Inflation rates came from 34.8% or thereabouts to 14.8%. Then it rose marginally in December because of the demand push in December to about 15.5% or thereabouts. So inflation rate has come down significantly. That's an indication that prices, and that's what we have to rely on. And if you now look at it, it doesn't happen overnight. Economic changes are a combination of different processes, not an event. They are not going to be mere events that will happen overnight. Then it's a whole lot of activities. What strategy government has brought aboard that people should commend is that government is looking at every sector. How do we ensure there's competition? The key thing is to ensure that market forces deal with the issue of pricing, not fixed price. Government does not fix price. Government does not legislate price. What government does is to look at petroleum products, for instance. Should we leave it to a company to have a monopoly? If you have a monopoly, that company will have power to fix price and quantity. And government saying, okay, if you have the capacity to also bring from abroad, so be it, as long as you are not taking money from government. So there's a form of competition in that sector. So every sector will have competition. If you look at agricultural value chain, for instance, government can say, okay, let's leave it to farmers. But because we don't really have the comparative advantage to do
large-scale
farming, we don't have the technology, we don't have the advanced biology, we don't have the skills as the real experience and in commercial agriculture. Government is still creating a little flexibility to make sure that people don't go hungry. So if you look at President Tinubu's strategy, it's focused on ensuring that there's no supply gap in any sector of the economy. So gradually, if you have competition, which is key, forces of demand and supply, ultimately prices will begin to come down steadily and organically. What people envisage or people expect that if Naira goes up by 10% today, prices should follow suit the following day. No, it doesn't work. Like there's supply chain, manufacturing complications and all the likes. Takes some time, but gradually, that's why I said government should intensify efforts. They should not assume that we are there yet. Keep pushing, keep looking at each sector, see how you can boost supply of those items. Where you have shortages, see how you can bridge the gap. Look at the agricultural value chain. What are the concerns of farmers? For instance, they complained about low profit margin last year. How can government use insurance? How can government use a sort of equalization fund to bridge the gap between their profits and the loss they're incurring as a result of flexibility in food supply? So government should look at those sectors one by one. And one critical thing is people who are occupying of big offices in Nigeria should live up to the expectations of those offices and the people. They need to communicate more. They need to have clear and convincing plans. See the tax reforms. It would have been very terrible. But key operators in the sector, they've been up and doing, engaging the press, engaging the people, telling people what it's all about. So that made people to have a little confidence in the process. And by the time the whole thing kicked off this year, people, oh, okay, we've got nothing to fear. The fear, the anxiety of December, of November about the tax reforms, everything has disappeared now. People have gotten their pay bills, their paycheck, and they've realized that, oh, we even had it better than we thought. So those who have responsibilities to develop the economy, those who have responsibilities to manage the economy, those who have responsibilities to regulate the economy should be seen to be doing their work, and they should be very effective on it to complement the effort of the president to revitalize key sectors of the economy.
All right, and I believe there is even a marching order from the president for them to go out there and talk about what they're doing to make lives better for Nigerians. If I may go back quickly to one of the points you made about people's expectation that when, for instance, now we know that the Naira has appreciated 1,400 Naira as at Wednesday. By Thursday, I want to go to the fuel station and realize that I'm buying it for cheaper. I go to the market, I buy my bag of rice, for cheaper. But like you said, it doesn't work that way. But then they also ask questions because when the prices go up, immediately on old stock, they begin to pay new prices. So why do marketers do that to us?
The role of speculation in the economy. You see, the economy is confidence-driven. The financial market in particular is confidence-driven. It's information-driven. And it goes up easily. It comes down in a more difficult way. It doesn't with the same pace. So if you announce, for instance, that oil price is going up by 10% today, you can be sure prices will go up by another 15%. But if you announce today that oil price is going up by 10%, you probably have a marginal reduction in price about 1% or 1.5%. It's a gradual process. The build-up takes more time than the other side of it. So by and large, there is reason to be optimistic. We have reasons to be optimistic. Many analysts have put Naira rate this year as around 1,400, 1,380. But people are beginning to look at it more comprehensively and say, oh, we can even have it better. The budget benchmark is put at 1,400.
Indeed.
And people are even beginning to say we can surpass this. And sincerely, we can. All the figures are clear now in terms of level of consumption. May go up a little bit in different sectors because people will begin to consume more as income goes up too. Consumer spending will go up. And by and large, we are likely to have, in the course of the year, better exchange rates, probably coming down to between 1,350 to 1,420 or thereabouts all through the year. It's left for government to engage business operators, especially manufacturers, to see the benefits in this and create incentives for them that these incentives will be provided along with this if you're able to meet these targets in different sectors of the manufacturing area. If we're able to have these targets going by what we are going to provide, manufacturing targets, set these manufacturing targets and make sure that they, out of moral observation, they all comply with those targets and they keep within the understanding reach with government. But government must reach out to the organized private sector, provide incentives, make those incentives provided under the understanding. We need the understanding that prices will be kept within certain reach and they will produce as much as expected so that the economy can be awash with goods and services.
Yeah, and does it mean that maybe now also we need the FCCPC to be up, the Consumer Protection Commission?
Well, the Consumer Protection Commission protects consumers. They don't really know. They don't really have much to do with intensifying competition within the economy. What I think we need is for government to, number one, sustain incentives to manufacturing by making sure that the reforms are working. For instance, if you want dollars, for instance, you can walk to any bank and get your dollars. Seamlessness of economic transactions, government must make sure they facilitate that. Government will also continue to build on infrastructure. If you were traveling on Lagos about the expressway 4 years ago, you probably spent 2 hours, but now you can spend about an hour. Government should intensify that. If you are traveling from Victoria Island to Dangote Refinery before, probably spend 2 hours. With the Lagos-Calabar highway that is opened up for people are spending 40 minutes. That's a lot of incentive to business. So government must look at those things where we have the manufacturing areas in the east, in the west. How can we create link markets faster than we are doing? We have to link the market to market to consumers. So when government begins to pick these things one by one, then you have the regional bodies too. They should begin to work and look at what economy, what the potentials in each of the regions, Southwest Development Commission, how they can easily integrate those states, integrate their economy, integrate their farms, and making sure that there is no gap. As the federal government is working, the state governments should also work because they collect a lot of money.
All right, Mr.
These are the issues that we must begin to engage government and policymakers on.
Indeed. Well, we need to take another break now. When we come back from this break, the conversation would continue on what this appreciation of the Naira means for the economy and what threats that we must look out for as a country to ensure that we are able to sustain this momentum. Please stay with us. We'll be back shortly. 1,400 Naira to a dollar on the foreign exchange market. My guest, Kayode Oyedeji, is here. Ms. Oyedeji, markets, economy is prone to shocks. I strongly believe that. So what are those threats? What are those shocks that we must look out for as a country to ensure also that we are able to prepare against them and they don't affect us and take us back where we're coming from?
Well, we can work hard to mitigate those potential threats. For instance, we are still oil-driven. Oil price fluctuation can be a challenge. We are approaching another cycle of elections next year, that which is always, historically, it's always a threat to the Naira because, number one, you have misguided spendings. You have expansionary fiscal tendencies that are not well regulated or well planned. Then you have a lot of pilfering, a lot of leaks within the economy, the circular flow of income. Historically, you have exchange rate volatility towards election. People always allege that key operators will take out a lot of money, buy dollars to bribe, to pursue electoral activities. There'll be diversion of money to fund campaigns at all levels and all that. So those two things are really big issues of concern as we consolidate on the gains made so far. So that's why I said earlier that we can't really clap with one hand. It's important and critical for government to look at the revenue side as well as the expenditure side, where you've reformed revenue side and you have bumper harvest of revenue from people and all sorts. You must be sure that you also have similar level of reforms that will ensure that these revenues are properly used. It's key. So as we approach the election year, it will provide a basket of opportunities because the system will be awash with money for people who have there'll be high liquidity within the economy. But the problem is it can also create problem for the Naira if what we used to have before is allowed to take place, when corruption, you go for party convention, you buy all the dollars in the markets, in the black markets, you force, a lot of disjointed activities, a lot of misplaced priorities. Then you want to execute projects that are not well planned, well prioritized, and not well focused, just to make people to clap for you as elections are coming. So those are the threats. Biggest of all, of course, which we are confronted with in Nigeria is likely fluctuation in oil price. And I think if you're able to invest more in the real sector, spend what we have, the war chest we made so far, and the proceeds from tax reforms, especially at the state level. If you're able to spend that judicially, we won't have so much, those factors won't have so much effect on the value of the Naira and ultimately on consumers.
All right. And as lawmakers begin debate and, of course, towards passage of the bill, do you see them perhaps changing that figure from 1,400 Naira as projected by the president in his estimates?
Well, it's always good to stay on the safe side. We are 1,400. Historically, it's not bad for the year. And if we're able to go beyond that, it's also a good one for the economy. It's only that maybe there'll be a little revenue shortfall in terms of Naira receipts. It's the Federation account, a little shortfall of that from projection to actual. But that can be covered up if they're able to do more. If they're able to generate more money, that will be easily made up for. For instance, if you're able to increase our oil output during the year, and we maintain the same $64 or thereabout per dollar benchmark, if you're able to increase outputs, we don't have a problem. If that happens, we'll be able to cover the grant. So I think for prudential purpose, it's safe to keep it at 1,400 and see what happens from there. The only disadvantage is the Naira receipt to the Federation account may be a little lower, marginally lower than expected, which is not a problem really.
All right, because Forex will then be growing,
the
right?
The economy will have better gains from that will surpass that.
Okay, and as the year, the year has started high. This is January, today is January 29th, right? And we're recording this already. So what are your projections for the rest of the year?
Well, for this year, really, last year was a year that government worked very hard to stabilize the economy. We're on a path to recovery. And like I said, the direction of the economy presents a lot of opportunities. And it's similar to what we had in 2006, 2007. And if you look at what we had in 2006, 2007, during banking consolidation and all the reforms President Obasanjo brought on board then, we had, initially President Obasanjo came, we had a decline in key indicators. We had inflation going up. So but gradually he was able to make a turn, stabilize the economy, then everything went up. So you have a U-shaped trend. We are beginning to have that experience now that you have a U-shape, a slight decline from 2023 when President Tinubu started, and the figures, the trend is beginning to look at north. So it's a very good one. This year, the same trend will be maintained. The GDP will grow. The forecast is between 4.5 and 5%. Inflation rates, government would work very hard to bring it to a single digit this year. If we're able to achieve those two things, then we can begin to say that there'll be bumper of opportunities for people. And I've had places where we've had to talk about the potentials in the economy. It's enormous. President Obasanjo's strategy is to use the subnationals to drive development as much as they can. If he's able to get them to do that, ensure independence of the local authorities, the local councils, let them be able to spread the money at the grassroots to impact on the environment, instead of one state governor hijacking federal allocations to local government. If they're able to get that financial independence to the local government, they get the money, they spend it within their local, empower local businesses, empower communities, empower down to every street, getting something from government, there'll be a boom that will shock everybody. The multiplier effect of that will be very strong on the economy. So household to be empowered, there'll be more money, disposable income. And when your disposable income rises, you have more feeling to invest. So we have more investment. If we have more investment, we're going to create more jobs. So unemployment rate is going down. Inflation rate is going down. The GDP is on a growth trend. It's going up. Everybody should be expectant this year. Look at those opportunities, those emerging opportunities, and position yourself. I will give you a little instance before I wrap it up. In 2004, immediately after the banking consolidation, virtually every business that had good feasibility was able to access funds to do 4 or 5 times. There's a particular company, the bakery, that wanted to raise 400 million. That company eventually raised 4 billion naira for expansion, for growth. We are getting into that. But an average Nigerian must be conscious of the fact that you need a balance sheet. You need to keep proper record. You need to be able to convince investors. You need to be able to also convince even consumers that you are doing the right thing. If you're able to do that, the opportunities are enormous. We are going into an era of endless opportunities. Government is clearing the mess. Nigerians should surge forward to take advantage of those emerging opportunities. So this year, we expect government to be able to achieve those things, achieve about 4.5% growth in the GDP, bring inflation rate to a single digit, and begin to work towards making sure that you even have a double-digit growth in the GDP. Then create more jobs, facilitate creation of more jobs, look at those things. If you're able to do that one, the economy is ready to reward anybody who is determined to grow. The economy is ready to reward that person.
And how might this influence the interest system? I mean, in the banking sector now, when people apply for loan, for instance, how might this influence bringing down the figures? I mean, the interest rate.
Thank you. The banks are undergoing another era of consolidation. The capital base is going up. So more revenue in the hands of government, more revenue in the hands of financial institutions. You need a balance sheet that is viable, that is convincing to attract that money from them. Government is supporting credit, building a credit-based economy, giving loans to students, for instance, giving loans to lecturers, then doing renewed home mortgage, all this stuff you see all over the places, making it easier for people to access credit. So the economy is beginning to drive on credits. Then the banks are getting bigger and bigger in terms of the funds available for them to deploy. You know, when you give banks, when you buy their offer, you do their right issue and all this stuff, they are not just keeping that money in their vaults. They are going to trade with the money. And when we say trade with the money, it means they are going to give you that as loan or buy securities. But if they are going to create, they are going to use it to create risk assets. That means the money is available for you and I, businesses that have balance sheets to borrow from. So because of the increasing volume of money available for credit, interest rates will come down. And if we look at the regulator side through the CBN is also likely to continue to drop rates gradually as inflation rate comes down. By the time they have the next NPR meeting, for instance, you see that they are likely to drop the rate. Once the rate comes down, the interest rate in the market will come down. So gradually, all things being equal, we are assuming there won't be any political itch, there won't be any political crisis, there won't be any unexpected, unenvisaged development within the economy. We expect that this economy will deliver strongly this year. So people should be ready for those opportunities as they emerge.
Indeed, and Nigerians should be ready to key into the opportunities when they arrive to make the most of it. You know, earlier you took that out of my mouth because I was going to ask you how Nigerians can actually key into the boom.
It's a thing that should be talked about, really, because businesses must expand as the economy expands. If you operated in Nigeria in the last 4 or 5 years, you've employed 4 or 5 people. This year, your target should be 7, 8. It's not just motivational talk, it's reality. The basket of opportunities provided by the economy. You should be able to employ more people. By doing that, you are reducing the rate of unemployment within the system. And we are doing a survey on the performance of small businesses, for instance. One thing we discovered that in 2025, businesses had shortage. I'm talking about SMEs and small businesses now, small and medium enterprises. One of the problems that confronted them in 2025 was shortage of skilled manpower to help them drive their growth. Every small business we visited in Lagos, we have applied within. And when you talk to them about what has happened to them, say, I've been looking for staff I can't get. So when people talk, you are unable to marry that with the level of unemployment that people talk about.
Yeah.
Virtually every small business in Lagos today needs staff, needs people to drive their growth. They have markets, they have the products, but they don't have people to stand with them.
So is it that there are not enough people, or maybe they are not paying enough for the people to be attracted?
Well, even where they are ready to pay, there is this implosion in the entrepreneurial system.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be the boss. And if you look at the food value chain, for instance, the level at which small food vendors are springing up by the roadside, it's alarming. So it's a clear indication that there is rapid sudden growth in the economy.
All right.
But this growth must be regulated, and government must look at it critically, because government must be able to harvest the positive energy of the people, regulate it, and transform it to growth and development.
That is key, very important. It's been great having you with me in the studio, Kayode Oyedeji, an economist and financial analyst. Thank you very much for your time on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me too.